Welcome to another episode of The Mind's Eye with Mike Lowry. Guys, thank you so much as always for tuning in. I have touched down in Houston, Texas to do this episode. I'm tapping in with one of my best friends. We've been friends for over 25 years, and we have had multiple conversations about this topic, and we wanted to kind of tap in about going 50-50 in relationships. You know, we look at social media and see what the narrative has, placed, and we kind of want to debunk some of the narratives and talk about some things that we kind of deal with within our regular lives because regular people have 9 to 5s or what have you. So without further ado, here's my boy Kedrick. Let's get to it. So Kedrick, tell the people a little bit about what you do.
Okay, so my name is Kedrick Winfield. I am originally from Washington, North Carolina.
Taking it
Been
back.
out here in Houston for about 18 years now.
Seems
So
like it.
I'm one of those corporate hybrid entrepreneurial types. So I am also the owner, in addition to my corporate job, of NRG Freight and Logistics, where we haul dirt and sand. We're on the construction side of transportation in the industry. So I feel like I've done it all, man. I feel like I've gone to college. I was in the military. Did the marriage thing over a decade. Got the kids, and now I'm on the other side, and I have a perspective, if you will.
Yeah,
So
that's what we want. We want a good perspective.
want the
for sure.
perspective. Here's mine, unadulterated perspective. So
I appreciate that. Well, I'm glad to have you on The Mind's Eye with Mike Lowry, man. So let's just get to it. I know you've seen a lot of the posts and the narratives about like 50-50. What do you see that going forward? I know you said, divorce was something in the past, and if you see yourself getting in a relationship, in the future, how does that look for you? Is it 50-50 something that you aim for, or what's the next steps in relationship when it comes to that for you?
yeah, man. So I love the question. So for me, I am, I guess, the quintessential 50-50 kind of guy, And I know a lot of, women don't like to hear that, but genuinely and honestly, it should be 50-50 regardless. I think I have a couple guardrails up for me and like in my relationships and things like that. So one of the things I always lead with is, first of all, I'm not looking for any more children. I'm not looking for any more dependents. I don't necessarily need, another child. So when I meet a young lady, I typically want her to be kind of, at least in the same range or realm where I'm in. So I feel like, why would it be a problem for it to be 50-50 if we're going to split it down the pot anyway? I got a business, I have income coming in. I want somebody that's going to, share. So if we want to build a house, let's build a house.
Right.
When I say 50-50, that's a starting point.
For sure.
In the end, it might end up being 60-40. It might be in
Right.
70-30. But I have certain guardrails in place, and one of them is a starting point right there. So if somebody wants to come into my life personally, I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but if somebody wants to come in my life, I want some shared sacrifice from the beginning.
For sure. That's a good perspective to have. The way I see it too, especially like at our old age, I'm 40 now. To your point, we're not really like looking to have kids really anymore. So if you find a partner or what have you, like, what is she really bringing to the table? I can see traditionally, like, going back right out of high school or right out of college maybe, and, like, the guy's the breadwinner, you raising, they say 2 kids under 2, and she's staying at home, and you're kind of providing and taking care of, the family in that aspect. And so she's kind of bringing that nurturing to the family. But, like, now in our old age, it's just, like, how are you contributing to us? Like, what are you adding to our life? And vice versa. It's not just about, like, what she can, pour into us, but what we can pour into her as well. I feel like you had a point about that.
I mean, you keep mixing me up with the old age, man. I mean, speak for yourself, man. I'm still in my 30s right now.
Come
so
on, man.
I'm
You got
still...
like 35 days
hey,
left.
man, it is what
in
it
your
is.
30s.
I'm sorry, man. My philosophy is just based on my experience, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I got different friends in different walks of life, right? So, as I'm trying to be supportive to, especially at this weird age, I'll step back and say, at this weird age, I feel like I can almost be a little bit of a mentor to guys a few years younger than me.
Yeah.
And also guys actually a couple years older than me, because I can't tell you how many guys I meet here in the city, whether we just smoking cigars or whatever, just out at some place, and they'll be like, "Oh, you were married or whatever. Like, what do you think about this?" And I'm not a not a relationship expert or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I still do have a great relationship and co-parenting relationship, with my ex, and I'll share with them like, hey, if you've never been married and you've just been, what we call doing your thing over the last 10, 15 years in and out of short relationships, most of the guys that say that, I genuinely feel like they're not ready to get married. They might be ready to kind of settle down, but at this particular point in juncture, if you out with me 3 or 4 nights a week, you're not really ready to get married.
Sure.
You're not looking at
because
places.
where you stand. You know where you're looking at the situation. I mean, I get that too. Like, for me, I'm dating, what have you, and I'm kind of in a space of like, I do want to get married again. I was once married before, and obviously that didn't work out due to whatever the reason was. And so I do take a step back, and I do want to go into the situation a lot differently. So I do look at it like it's more of a partnership. Love is the starting point, the attraction, but it's not all of it. I need more than that. I need something that we can kind of, come together on and build something together on. Whether, to the point you made earlier, is if it's 60-40 that I'm giving 40 this week and you're giving 60, and then vice versa, versus expecting me to always be the one to always have to take care of something. What if God forbid something happens to me and I lose my job, or I break my leg, or I can't go back to work? Like, can you, still hold us down? Like, what happens after that? And again, being 40, the kids are a lot older now. They can kind of fend for themselves almost. I mean, you're just providing a roof over their head. And for me, I have a 21-year-old daughter. You know what I mean? So believe it or not, she's grown now. So meeting somebody new and building something with them, like, it's got to be a partnership. It can't just be, I'm paying all the bills and you just sitting around the house, when now I make enough money to pay everything and even somebody to clean the house. You know what I mean? So you got to be more than just that. So with that, I wanted to segue into something else, because, we're not considered celebrities, if you will. And so we work hard, we have average jobs, we do well for ourselves. With that being said, given that average marriage rate recently has increased, where it feels like people are just getting married just because it sounds like it makes sense, do you think that even at our status in place is important to get a prenup? Because I think that oftentimes we just look at it, well, millionaires, they should definitely get a prenup because we don't know if she's in it for the right reasons. Versus even now, regular people may have $100,000 in their 401k, and then unreconcilable differences, and now you got to give up half. That'll change somebody's life. What's your take on that? Just being, a good regular person, if that makes sense.
A good regular person. I mean, okay, so here's my take on it. It's a cost that has to be uncovered.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have one going in because I got married early, so we didn't have anything. We were building together. I was building my first house when we got married. I was still young. I was like, 23, building my first house. So that was the only really asset I was buying into. I bought some equity into that. Mm-hmm. At this particular point right now, having a business, having a small growing valuation on a business at my place, I would entertain getting a prenup, because I wouldn't want someone, especially if they're not willing to work and share in the sacrifice for my business.
Yeah.
So, fast forward a year, 2 years from now, 3 years, whatever, I'm going to want to spoil whoever I'm with, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not just that. I'm going to want to, I'll buy the shoes, I'll buy the bags every now and then or whatever. But what I don't want to get myself into a situation of is working, doing all of that, because I have a corporate job too, and I manage my business in between. Yeah. It's not like I just work 9 to 5. In like a consulting role, I schedule my day, I schedule my priorities and my task, and I may need to do some work for the business in between.
Mm-hmm.
It's never really an issue as long as my clients get served. But in terms of a prenup, if I'm buying the shoes, I'm going to work and I'm running a business and everything, and the other party isn't putting into my business, then she's not helping out with the kids because my youngest is 8 now. You know what I'm saying? Like, and so when we go to split, the example that guys always talk about in the cigar lounge is Jeff Bezos. You know, and was she with him shooting in the gym to get half of that?
Mm-hmm.
I can't speak on that, and I don't like to talk on it too much because none of us in my realm are billionaires.
Yeah.
But so I guess the typical answer, it depends.
Yeah, even with the Jeff Bezos thing too, I was thinking like, obviously she probably, helped take care of the kids, growing up and stuff like that. But then it's just like, she still lived like a successful life. Like, you know what I'm saying? She had it all. She had anything that she could ever ask for, lived in mansions, multiple estates or what have you. But then when they split, it's almost as if you're paying her off to take care of y'all kids, essentially, when it don't work out, especially if she doesn't really have the hands-on to the business. Now, granted, if he was out there doing his own thing and she was raising the kids, I always look at it like they're her kids too. And so Ryan Clark made a good point, and he was like, people look at prenups as like, and they kind of frown upon them because they look at it like, well, what if it doesn't work out? You just kind of, she can't take half. You can actually put in your prenup like, like a plan, like, God forbid this doesn't work out. We could say, I'll be willing to help and support you for the next 5 or 10 years. You'll get X amount of dollars or what have you. And then from there, you kind of move on versus like, oh, wow, we split up. Now I got to give you, in Jeff Bezos' case, like $30-something billion. Like, that's just insane to me. You know what I'm saying? And it's all in the sense, like, we don't know what went on behind the scenes.
Right.
Like, in terms of, like, all she's, did or committed to or what have you. We do know she was there and she's, supported the kids, but it just seems like unrealistic for her to just get 30-something billion, just off that. And I think that we get caught up in those narratives because we see it on social media, we see it online, and then we apply those same principles to our regular lives, thinking like, oh, well, I should be able to get half of that. And it's just like, were you in it for the right reasons to begin with, if that's the goal? And I always think that, like, if I say, like, building, this business and growing in this space, and she has a problem with a prenup, then it's just like, do you really love me? Do you really care? Are you really supporting this? Unless you had a lot of hands and foot into the building of this business, then I can understand that.
That's a hard sell.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a hard sell. I mean, I want to go back because the reason why we're talking about this right now, we're having this conversation is because, we're on social media, we're in we got our group chats and stuff like that. And we talk, amongst the guys. And I can't tell you how many times, I've gone out and, a lady will ask me, are you a passport bro? And I'm like, I guess it depends. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is a relatively new movement. And shoot, I was a military vet at 17, so I've traveled the world and I've indulged. So if that makes me a passport bro, I guess it makes me, a passport bro. I mean, it is what it is at the end of the day. The opportunity, I'm not going anywhere to live some fantasy dream like some of these guys who think, oh, I'm sick and tired of black women. Right?
Yeah, that's crazy.
I hate to hear that though.
Yeah.
Or if a lady asks me, do you date outside your race? Or I think I was asked recently, is your ex-wife black? And I'm like, clearly you don't know me. I'm all with the Black Queens for
for sure.
The Black Queens Forever movement. So I mean that's not a question. However, a big however, abroad the sentiment is different. The care can come off very different sometimes. The femininity can come off very different. So when we're having these conversations online, it's like, oh, do you like just black women, or do you like just black, American women? Asterisk. No, because black women aren't a monolith. So if I'm engaging with somebody, or if I'm talking with, a young lady or whatever, my field of play is open.
Yeah.
So, I take the comments and the criticisms with a grain of salt. And as we're having these conversations, not only in the guys group chats, but sometimes when we'll have a little live conversation with, some of the friends as we've done before, it comes off, and I don't want to come off too much of an asshole, but it is what it is. I don't know how you feel about that,
No. I wanted to touch on that, the black women thing too. I actually just did a video recently about it, and this guy was like going in on this guy that has a podcast that talks about, like, I think simps before pimps or something like that, and they just always downing black women. And I always just say, like, everybody has their own individual experience, right? And with that, I've learned that just in people in general, whether it's a man, woman, guy, whatever, there's good people and there's bad people, no matter what the race is. And I just hate that narrative has been on social media and it's loud. And I just try to take every opportunity to try to debunk that narrative about this whole black women as a totality. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful black women out there that'll take care of you, that'll support you, that'll have your back when you're down. I mean, the other thing that guy was talking about, he was like, man, y'all mamas are black. And like, you just have this, negative narrative. And then now you have other people that may not be as educated as we are or as intelligent. And then they go on that narrative thinking the same thing and have not had one experience with them. Right. They just believe this because once somebody has a certain platform and a certain amount of followers, they think that what they have to say is somewhat credible. You know what I mean? Whether it is or it isn't. They just like, well, people follow them. You know what I mean? And there's just a lot of stuff out there. I don't claim to be an expert, but I just know when I've seen good people, and it's in all races, and bad people. You know what I mean? Okay. So
let me ask you this though.
Sure.
I had I had some things transpire in life recently that made me really question, how I want to structure like my next 10 to 20 years. Okay. Everybody has, things that they do first. And, there's a quote that says, what you do first speaks the loudest. You know what I'm saying? So whether that's, how you structure your day, how you just go about doing anything, it's the small habits that we do daily that lead to where we are today. So I got a couple categories. Fitness, faith, fun, how you ground yourself, education, finance, and family. That's a lot of buckets.
Yeah, it is.
Let's just maybe take them one by one real quick, because you're the mind's eye perspective guru.
For sure.
What's your perspective when it comes to fitness? And when I say that, what you do first speaks the loudest. What's your take on it? What's most important? What do you think about first when I say fitness?
Fitness is just like a release, like for me. Like it's an opportunity for me to like, push the limits with my body. For example, we were just talking earlier today, and I had a 5 o'clock flight to be here, and he was joking on me about like, why would you go play ball last night? I was like, why not? Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I didn't start playing until 9:30, and I was done. I cut it short a little bit because I know I had to, pack. Men, we don't pack until like the morning of or the night right before. So, but it's a lifestyle. It's a part of my life. And I actually had a game the day before that. And what I've learned about that the most is that when I haven't been playing, I don't feel my best. My body is tight, it's sore. Like even if I have to like go up a flight of steps or have to climb up on like a little ledge or something, I'm just like, ugh. But like at 40, I play ball 2 nights in a row, and I can probably go play right now again. You know what I'm saying? Because it's become a lifestyle.
You remember how I used to bust you in high school?
No, ain't no way. You would get the steals and then pass me the ball.
Okay. All right. We're going to jump and then we'll come back. So, all right, Faith.
Faith
What
is
about
like
faith?
the number one thing. Like it's who I am. I'm a God fearing, God first man of God. Like I will um debunk a lot of these myths and narratives. Like I have friends right now, we have debates about God, and I will show them scripture, like the entirety of the Bible. We oftentimes will say, let's just look at this scripture and say, oh, well, this is what it says, but we're not studying the passage, like who wrote it, people just reading it. They're not studying it. You know what I mean? If you want to have a relationship with God, you have to study it, and that's just again become a lifestyle. This is who I am. It's a part of me, and I think that's passed down, from my father.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. I'm gonna skip down to education. What do you feel about education?
So I feel so. It's so funny. I don't want to mess his name up, but I think it's John Bryant, and
John Hope Bryant.
John Hope Bryant.
Yeah.
Like he's really he. So his thing with education is like he's not the biggest on like going to college. He's
Mhm.
just like, you can go to college. There's nothing wrong with it. Blah blah blah. And then but education to him is like reading, researching, studying. If
Absolutely.
there's a particular thing that you want to get better at or learn about, read it, research it, do that type of stuff. So I'm big on education and that aspect. I'm not the biggest fan of like saying, oh, I got to go to college to get this particular degree. But if it's something that I'm trying to improve in, I'm going to do the research and back it up, because I get in so many debates, especially in this space. Like I can't have talk anymore now. It's be like, oh, because you got that podcast now, you think you know everything. I was like, no,
Yeah.
I've done the research too. I can back up what I'm saying. So to me, that's also education.
Got you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm gonna go in reverse, and I'm gonna respond to the three. I think those first three, right?
Okay.
So in terms of faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
Me personally, I like to wake up in the morning, and one of the first things I do is just kind of go out on the patio,
Mm-hmm.
and read something, probably like Proverbs, a wisdom chapter or something
Yeah.
like that. I feel like that's
Mm-hmm.
really like benefited me over the years, and
Mm-hmm.
then maybe journal or whatever. I've been able to kind of create my life. I feel like, as opposed to a lot of other people who are chasing
Yeah.
things, because
Mm-hmm.
I've been somewhat chasing wisdom. And I think part of that came in the last, I would say maybe 6 years or whatever. I had a really successful friend, who was inspirational to me,
Mm-hmm.
especially considering, some of the accolades and everything that person had achieved in life. And we were at like at like a condo one time, and, real high overlooking the city. And it's like everybody loved the patio. It's got the
Mm-hmm.
wraparound, steps out. He's like, man, every morning I wake up and I go talk to God and, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
basically like
Mhm.
smoke a
All
cigar,
right.
but
Yeah.
smoke a cigar and talk to God at this amazing view.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, some of the smallest things stick with us sometimes.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I don't live in a high rise like that, but I got a pretty nice view. And
Mm-hmm.
every morning I try to make it, a priority, because I don't want to be waking up in the morning rushing to get ready.
Mm-hmm.
That's not, we can do that for the next
Yeah,
30,
I
40
don't like
years and
to
still
rush
feel unfulfilled. So I've gotten to the point where I've enjoyed being able to do that before I even touch anything with work.
Yeah.
That's really like been a
Mhm.
game changer for me.
Yeah.
Fitness.
Before you get to fitness, I want to say
Okay.
something about the spirituality aspect of it. One thing that has helped me and grow my relationship with God is is understanding that He's not a genie, and then it's kind of finding like and it is a commitment, but in that it's like when I'm praying or asking God for something, and understanding that His time isn't our time, is that if it doesn't come today, tomorrow, or next week, or when I'm expecting it to, can you walk in it with me until I get there?
Okay.
And once I've changed that perspective about, oh man, God, get me to that thing, and say, well, can you be here with me while I'm going through the thing I'm going through until I get there? Then my relationship with Him has gotten better, because there's things that He wants to prepare me for. There's character building. There's things that I need to understand or see in this space before I can even get to where I'm praying for.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I got you.
mhm.
And then just the testimony to kind of piggyback off of that, I told you recently, I got notified, late last week.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, they're eliminating my position in Houston.
Yeah.
I had never been worried, not 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
So I've shared it with a couple of people, and I've had soft offers over the last 2 or 3 months at like competing firms and things like that. So, but this is it's an insurance thing. It's just a baseline stability because I never want to touch, my anything on the entrepreneurial side because that's like a supplement. It's like a 401k for me. It's a building.
Right.
But had a person also that I respect. I shared it with him. First thing he said was congratulations.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I think I know what you mean, but expound on that. He was like, God just opening up another door for you.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
You gotta be sold out on that. I know a lot of what you got going on. This is your opportunity. Without people like that, it's just a whole bunch of fear mongering. I don't really care what 40, 45, 47, about to do because he always doing something crazy. Bombing people the other day.
Yeah.
I can't live my life with the fear mongers. So I'm not worried about that. And then I'm having a breakout year on the business side, multiple times what we've done in years past. So I'm just so assured that if nothing materializes over the next couple months, I already know I'm straight.
Yeah.
But, I just like that stability, and I got a lot of people counting on me. So I'm going to continue to grind because of that. All right.
Hold on. I want to
bouncing back again.
No, this is getting good, man. So I actually talked about this recently too on Instagram. Sometimes we get extremely comfortable in a particular space, right? And we think that we're doing fine and we're doing good. But God is like, in order for me to get you to move into a bigger and better space, I need to take something away from you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So.
Yeah. So that was faith. Yeah, we did faith, right? I think I skipped the education. So for me, on the education side, I've gotten away from like physically reading books, like you said with John Hope Bryant. Oh, well, if I step back, I got the degrees, right? I got the undergrad degree. I got the master's degree, the MBA.
I don't brag a little bit,
but it don't really do anything except put you on a hamster wheel race. For most people, they step out and they're juggling on the debt side. Luckily, as a veteran, all that's wiped out for me. But it didn't teach me anything about business. Yeah, from a small business standpoint, you go to school. And this is just like a sidebar from education. You go to school to learn how to be a great corporate employee. Out here on the business side, in the actual entrepreneurial side, they teach you nothing about that. And when I say nothing, it's almost really nothing. I have a whole undergrad degree. One of my dual degrees in undergrad is in entrepreneurship. One of the top undergrad entrepreneurial programs in the country. Man, I can tell you so much that they didn't teach me that I learned in my first 2 years.
Just doing it.
Especially when I quit my dream corporate job and went to go run the trucking business on the over-the-road side for a couple of years. I'm like, man, I was not prepared for any of this. So education becomes important because life is all about lifelong learning. You're not going to – you can't just stop growing when you – graduate high school. And I tell my kids that too. So now it's like all about reading the Jim Rohn books. I like to listen to what people like John Hope Bryant are saying. Intelligent people, faith-based people, because the older I get, I realize, man, the stuff that they're talking about in the Bible is really old. It's really old. I get excited when I listen to a Jay-Z verse that's like 15, 20 years ago, and it's like, man, he was talking about this in 2003? Right. And it's like, we just now getting on it? The Bible is really old, and the principles in the Bible and the wisdom in the Bible is, it's incomprehensible. So it's always about learning and growing.
You must be listening to my podcast, man, because in it, I always say, I was like, the stuff that happens today, the stuff that I specify or talk about now, a lot of times I will bring up a scripture that will reference what I'm talking about now just to prove the consistency. because it's been so long ago that the Bible was written, but it's still applied to today based on stuff that we may be dealing with or going through. I'm just like, this has to be real and true. If out of all these years, the scripture says this, and we can still apply it now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that just shows the longevity and stuff and how it has to be true, you know, with that. But did you say, what about fitness? Did you get on that?
I was about to say, so
Yeah.
fitness next. Man, I've kind of slacked back a little bit. I think one of the things that, because I get ridiculed every now and then from the guys, is like my brother called me the other day. He was like, man, if I could slim down, you know, to your size when you had those Speedos on. I was like, hold up, bro.
Come on, man.
First of all, I've never worn.
Only your brother can say something like
exactly.
that to you.
It's like, hold on, bro. I've never worn a set of Speedos. I said they were board shorts for the men's fitness competition.
Kept it at Speedos.
Nah, man. So, but, you know, people still remember that. That was like in 2017, 2018. People still remember that phase of my life. For one, it was one of those phases where I had a job where you can kind of dedicate your life to like that 5 times eating a day. You know, it's not anything I cared to continue forever, but it was just something, a goal, like when I ran a marathon before. So now I work out mainly for like consistency's sake, for the break, for the mental break, like you talked about, and to overall, you know, be healthy. Me personally, I don't like to be in the gym. I don't chase girls to go to the gym. I don't chase girls to go to church. I like to be If I want to see a girl or a nice looking female, I'm going to the lounge, to the club, to the bar, or whatever. When I go to the gym, I don't really want anybody to be in there. I try not to go to the gym after 5 o'clock. I'm trying to go 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, maybe 11 o'clock in the morning. Ideally in the morning, but where I'm at right now, I'm gonna wake up, you know, pray, meditate, or whatever. Check emails and do stuff then, relax. Maybe early afternoon, I'm going to go to the gym. But that's what's been grounding me. And a lot of this, simply because I realize I have had a lot of time off from work, unlike other people. You know, when I was in the military for years, then I got out and I went to school. I finished up school full time. I worked for several years, and then I quit and went back to school full time. And I've had these periods of I can step back and reflect. You know, whereas older generations, they're like, man, you know, I started working at 16, and now I'm like 65, 66, and I've been working straight, never stopped. That's not been my case. And, you know, it could be in the next 6 months, I'm not working for a couple months. Right. And I'm going to be okay. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But that's just me. So
I wanted to say something else about the gym that just dawned on me. Like, you know, being in this podcast space, you really kind of, you know, think about some of the stuff that other people say. And I listened to one before, and one guy was talking about like how for men, the gym is therapy, and that's all the therapy you need. Now, I've been working out my entire life. Like you said, life happens, you know, you take time off, you know, blah, 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 and then you find your way, you get back to it. And even though basketball is like a mental, like a release for me or what have you, I still think men need an outlet. And therapy is actually something that has changed my life. You know what I mean? And I think that, like, you know, a narrative that has been placed on us men that we always have to be so tough. You know, we can get our therapy at the gym, and then we can just go on about our lives, and then that's it. So I really wanted to ask you what your thoughts were about, you know, the gym being your only outlet when it comes to like your mental health, and whether that's enough or you feel like there's more you need. And like, it could be me that you hit up, or it could be another one of your homeboys or what have you, or it could be therapy. But me personally, I don't think the gym is enough, you know, for your mental health.
Man, that's a great question, man. I forgot all about how I handle that. No. The short answer, no. Gym cannot be like your only turn to when it comes to therapy. Yeah. So for me, I like to get out and talk to people. No, I'm not trying to share all of my business, but I like to, you know, meditate when I can. I hate to say find the time for me is for people who are always reacting to life.
Mm-hmm.
You make time for what you want to make time for.
sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
When you want to be in love, you always making time for that person.
Absolutely.
I hate to hear a person say, "Hey, I don't have time to meditate. I don't have time to read the Bible. I don't have time to go to the gym."
Yeah.
No, you make time for what you want to make time for.
For sure.
So if life gets you down, make time to meditate, to reset and rewire your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Ladies, stop listening to Sexy Red and Glorilla all the time.
Please.
Fellas, you can't be listening to Future and, Moneybag and all these,
It's a time and a place.
It's a time and a place.
But if you're really trying to like be on your uplifting, building, growing, inspirational aspect of it, you might have to take a break from that stuff for a little bit.
You got to. So there are several escapes. Like I said, physical activity is, and don't get it twisted when I say physical activity, in the gym is one outlet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not the biggest counseling therapy person.
Mm-hmm.
Now for couples, I think it's great when you find the right tools.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, stepping back a bit, I feel like at one point I had the best therapist counselor, but at the end of the day, it's like you can have the best workout plan. If you don't put it to use, it's of no value. And if you got two people who are busy and you're not gonna make the time, it's still not gonna work.
That's 1,000% correct. Somebody asked me one day, he thinks that therapy is BS. He thinks it's a myth, blah, blah. He asked me, he said, well, why do you think that like it doesn't work for some people? I was like, just like with anything, I was like, everybody is not made to be with everybody. Everybody's personality is different. People are going to adjust different. They're going to adapt different. And if you go into anything with the mindset that it won't work, it'll never work. If you're going into it open-minded with the opportunity to like heal and actually take something from it, then you can see that this person is not a good fit. And then you can try to find someone else. But if you're doing it because you feel like your spouse is making you or you're checking a box, you're never going to get anything out of it. I don't care how good that person is. Yeah. You have to show up too. Yeah. These people aren't like magical wands and they just going to fix you. Like you got to go there willing to, do the work because it is work. It's a journey. It's a life journey.
Yeah. I mean, my take is, and again, I kind of grew up in the Marine Corps too, right? So
Hoorah.
You're going to have to, most people probably have to tone my take down a little bit, but I feel like to a certain point, a lot of this therapy culture nowadays is complete bullshit. I say that because a lot of people use their therapy as a wall. There's a young lady, I can't remember.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, she says that, and I can't agree with her more.
She's a therapist.
I was about to say she is a therapist. This is therapy culture. They, people want to use therapy because I'm in the workplace and I'm being bullied. They don't like, they treated me this type of way because I'm black. Like, for me, like, I'm like, do you realize, like, our ancestors had to put up with so much more
worse than that
without therapy?
Yeah.
What was their outlet? The church. Nowadays, people got so many issues with the church when, personally, if you go to church or not, whatever, it's an outlet for me because I'm happy that I made it through the week. I'm not 40 yet. I'm almost 40, but I know a lot of people who didn't make it to 35.
For sure.
You know what I'm saying? And I feel like true church is done in a community like this. Yeah. This right here we're doing right now is just like a simulated version of what I get multiple times a week in a cigar lounge.
Yeah, for sure.
Cigars aren't the healthiest. No, they're not healthy. But I get an outlet and a release that most people probably don't get.
Yeah, for sure.
If you got contention at work and then you go home and you and your spouse, got issues, you don't really have a release. And if you do try to get out, sometimes maybe the spouse might feel a certain type of way or whatever. Now you got more problems or whatever. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a balance.
Well, that's what I was saying before when you were talking about you felt like, therapy was bullshit. The part of it is because people are not going about it the right way. And to her point, like people like will have a bad day and be like, oh, I got anxiety, blah, blah, blah. No, you just had a bad day. It's okay. Right. You'll get over it and then you'll have another day tomorrow or what have you. So people are putting so many labels on just regular stuff that goes on in life and want to identify it with something because a narrative has been created.
Yeah.
But that doesn't take away from the fact that if utilized properly, it can work. You know what I'm saying? Because it has worked for me. It's a tool. And just like anything, if you got a ratchet and you trying to use it over here to do this with, and you wonder why it's not gonna work, it's because that tool is not made for this. You got to go about it the right way. You know what I mean? So, and I think that oftentimes people aren't doing that. They're just checking a box. They wanna like instead of taking responsibility that you need to just adjust and adapt, you want to make excuses for why you where you are.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? It's just like, well, therapy is not working. I'm so depressed and blah, blah, blah. And then not to take nothing away from the fact that sometimes, you might be depressed.
Yeah.
But you're not going to be depressed because you got a flat tire today,
Yeah.
or something like that. That's a fixable situation, in no time. But to your point, I can understand why people look at therapy that way is because people have been misusing it for a long time. But if used right, it can be a great tool.
Yeah, I'll say this, man. A cure, at least for some people, I think maybe for most people, a cure for depression and maybe some anxiety is, yes, a consistent workout regimen, healthy lifestyle, fitness journey, however you want to put it. For me, if I get on a treadmill and I'm conscious about maybe what I'm about to put into my mind or whatever, if I get on the treadmill, whether it's a brief 20-minute walk or a mixed interval, walk and run, a lot of that stress will like fall off throughout that process. And people a lot of times aren't prioritizing that. Like I said, some type of spiritual meditation journey or like maybe a life group. And these things are like fundamental to your like well-being, and just wellness journey outside of just, want to break a sweat, build muscle, or, lose fat. It's mentally detoxifying too.
Yeah, for sure.
I know we got a little bit of time left,
Yeah, but with that being said, man, is there anything that like you want to leave with the people? I know we kind of started with like 50-50 relationships, and then we went on to like prenup, and then we kind of just got into just empowering us as individuals, because I think that's part of it too. Is like 50-50 is what you're pouring into other people in your relationship too. So if is your core right, based on your faith, your fitness, your education, or what have you. So is there anything that you feel you want to leave with the people? And your perspective, from your perspective, if you will?
I mean, my perspective is right now it's just centered around economic development. That's my, I guess, kind of life mission right now. Like, I appreciate being able to jump on with you, support your podcast. This is,
Appreciate it, man.
a growing podcast, Black owned or whatever. Any friend that I got that's doing something, whether they selling T-shirts or whatever, I'm supporting them right now. Everything else in life is just kind of, falling together. Not happenstance, not by any just, random occurrence. It's because of how I prioritize my life, and I get to create more rather than reacting. Because like I said, I'm not coming home at 6, 7 o'clock because Scott on the job told me I had to stay a little bit later or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
I'm supporting my culture, my community, and things like that. That's where I'm focused on, and it stems from some of the things that we talked about. Starting off with the faith, incorporating the fitness, self-development in terms of education, because academia isn't the be-all, end-all. I think if we get to more of at least those 3 foundational things, we as a community are going to be a lot better. And I think it'll help, in the home and stuff. And I say all that because, right now I'm out here. I'm being able to be a force. I'm able to create some jobs right now.
Absolutely.
I got some jobs and people that I can put to work. I'm trying to raise my kids and incorporate them into the business so that they'll have something to, grow to. Like my youngest son, I really don't want him to ever have to necessarily work for anyone else. I think that's one of my life goals. I don't want him to ever have to say, hey, I work for anybody other than the company that I own. So,
man, that's a whole nother conversation that we had to tap into at another time. It's like, You know, are you leaving a legacy or are you leaving an inheritance? You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
but with that being said, you know, what I would want to leave with the people in terms of like, you know, you as the individual, don't be so caught up in what you can receive in other people, especially if you're not in a place to give to other people. Because you got to start with the core. You got to do what's right within yourself, whether it's the fitness, the faith, the education, or what have you. And then that way you can then pour into other people, and then you can have an expectation, you know, from other people. But you can't walk around this earth expecting the world from other people, and you're still lacking in all those categories that you mentioned, you know, just within yourself. So, yeah. With that being said, that concludes another episode of the Minds Out with Mike Lowry. Kedrick, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to check out Kedrick's trucking company. The information will be described on the page. Don't forget the Minds Eye merch. Tap into the link above. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If there's any other topic that you guys wish for me to talk about, or you want my boy Kedrick back on the show, please let me know. Until next time, peace.